It's the Out the Box Rugby Podcast with André Pretorius and MV Welman.
Welcome back, André. Feels like this year's never going to end. It's been a while. It's only been a week, but it felt like ages since we last spoke, and for the first time in English. So yeah, let's have a look at the past weekend's games. Welcome back.
Yeah, good to be back, MV, and some exciting games to talk about.
Yeah, I'm a bit rusty. I struggle with that intro. So hopefully it gets better as we go along. I wanted to talk to you about skills specifically. There seems to be a bit of a problem, even with the Springboks, basic handling skills, basic with the way the balls are passed, hard passes rather than soft passes, soft hands and the likes. And it started to become a problem. You see it every time in most of the URC or Champions Cup games. There seems to be a bit of a problem in that sense. And I wanted to understand better how this works. How do you teach a rugby player that plays rugby as a professional to catch a ball properly or to pass it properly, that kind of thing? Can it be taught? And if it can be taught, how is it taught?
For sure. The most important thing is to realize how important basic skills are. I think if you look at that 2011, 2015 All Black sides, Wayne Smith got asked, how is the All Blacks always playing with such flair? And he had a very simple answer to that. He mentioned that we didn't have a lot of flair, but what we did have was our basic skills was at such a high level that we didn't have to think about catch and pass when other teams had to do it. So when the ball's on the way, we were on autopilot when it came to catch and pass, and that time we could use to think about the next option, to use our creativity. And I really like that answer because it means that once you understand the importance of those, and every coach says, go back to basics, but you'll only see a difference if you're really intentional with implementing that in your trainings. And I mean, I know of schools that the kids get really annoyed and bored with the handling skills, and then you have to show them warm-ups that the All Blacks and the Lions and Toulon and etc. do, and they can't believe it's a top international level team, international, national, provincial, doesn't matter. They can't believe that that's the level, and these guys start with those types of warm-ups. They think they always start with these game plans, and the top sides are really intentional with implementing a basic skills routine, which gives them that level up into the creativity and having more options.
All right. So how is it taught, though? I mean, let's say for argument's sake, you're a line-out jumper, a lock, or a loose forward or something. Firstly, you have to catch the ball. And I remember you saying that your hand is in front of your face. It's dangerous. The ball can hit you. Then you have to catch it. Then you have to turn yourself. Then you have to pass it to the scrum half in such a way that he can catch it easily, and not these hard passes that they've been doing lately. And the scrum half has to go forward to catch it, and then it sort of lands very hard. And then he has to readjust his entire body position and then pass it, and it ends up inevitably being passed high to the fly-off for the next player. How do they teach that? How does it actually work?
Part of it, the first part of it is you have to acquire the basic skill of the delivery itself from the lock or from the line-out catcher. So that part has to be taught. First it starts static, get the ball in, you start with the ball in a good position, get that feeling of pushing the ball down to the nines. And then from there, obviously, it becomes a little bit more dynamic from the delivery point. But also on the nine side, the catch of that, you start with the ideal situation. Where do you want it? Nines want it on the loading side, so they don't have to catch, load, and pass. They want to catch it on the loading side so they can have one motion in getting the ball to the next runner. But that doesn't always happen in the games. So what the skills coaches then will do is they'll then vary the delivery to the nine, being in the wrong position, over the head, and the nines have to find a way to fix that and get the pass into the next runner's hands as best they can. But also it's also a case of the nines adapting to the bad balls without putting the next guy under pressure. and they use different stimuli. So they'll go tennis ball, soccer ball, cricket ball, whatever the case may be, to get them to finish that catch first. Doesn't matter what the quality is, and then giving a quality pass from there, for instance.
I think Harry told me Antoine Dupont at one stage lost his tempo with his lock, so he went and played at lock and made the lock play scrum off in practice now, so that the lock can actually experience what it's like having to catch a bad ball, or in a bad way, whatever. And that seems to be quite clever.
There's nothing like putting someone into that position to make them understand. And the same for Dupont, going on line out, delivering that ball to a moving target, because although you get the ball, let's say you win the ball in the front of the line out, if you can turn your body and give the ball to the 9, catching mid line out or even close to the back, you've turned a 2 ball into a close to back ball, which makes the pass shorter and which makes the attack a lot more threatening. So there's a reason they want to try and do it, but it's a great way to put people in different positions and make them realize what's important and why they need to get that ball into that position.
The other thing about this type of handling, especially lineouts, for example, is the time that it takes. For example, if the scrum half has to step forward to catch a ball that should have been in his hands in the loading position, like you mentioned, but it isn't. It's ahead of him. So he has to step up, catch it there, adjust it, and pass it on. You've lost 2/10 or 3/10 of a second. The fly half is now getting the ball above his head. That loses another couple of seconds, and that's typically what puts a team's attack not puts it under pressure, but makes it less dangerous. That timing aspect, how long it takes as well, that comes with that as well, doesn't it?
For sure. And you can go back straight to the beginning. What did the lift look like? Did the lock catch the ball on the way up and he could deliver? Or was he on the way down? Was it a maximum height lift? And that has a big effect on what happens to the 9. And somewhere, someone's going to get caught man and ball if the quality of the pass is not rectified on the way to the next runner.
Mm. But passing the ball and catching the ball, that's not the only skills that we're talking about. We're also talking about how you go into a ruck and how you lie down, the position that your body must be in when you have to get the ball back to your backs or wherever. That's also part of skills, isn't it?
Yeah, for sure. Basic skills, tackle, ball carry, etc. Those, you can chunk those out into, take ball carry, for instance. Just catching the ball, driving, getting into space, showing hard bits to the defenders and ensuring that you finish on your chest. You can do that in repeated efforts to ensure that you get that without any defense. Just that you got that basic movement pattern and the basic skill. You succeed with that, you got the result you want, and then you put defense in, and then you start getting into that. And then when you get into trouble and that's why having processes is so important. When you get into trouble mid-season, maybe losing balls, you go back to your processes and you go and find out exactly where in the process are you breaking down. Is it the first part? Are you running into defenders too upright? Are you putting the ball in the wrong hand? Are you not strong enough in the contact? Are you not working hard enough after contact, etc., etc.? So when you got a process, you can go back to that process and pinpoint what you need to work on to get that process back into shape so that you can be at the standard you need to be.
All right. One thing that popped out there for me, you said present the hard bits. What does that mean?
So if you're putting if there's a defender on this side, what you want to do is you want to get the ball. Obviously, you want to get the ball on the opposite side of where the defender is, and then you want to present hard bits. Your shoulder, your elbow, your knee. Really close that up so that they can't get in there, and you want that back foot pressed. Kind of pressing, power stepping into him, and then driving and ensuring that you take the space and you're not running center mass of defenders and getting tackled backwards.
Right, you mentioned that we talked about processes and procedures right in the beginning. That was still in Afrikaans. Just give us a bit of a refresher exactly what that means.
If you take a process for ball carry, you want to ensure that you catch the ball early. So you want your hands going towards that, because that's part of your ball carry. If you're gonna catch the ball late, it's gonna drive you off your path. You're gonna be lateral. You'll be an easy target for the defenders. So you want to catch the ball early. Early catch also means that you can play. You can play inside. You can play outside. Once you decide you're going to carry, you need to decide, which space am I going into? If I'm going into that space, I want to get the ball in away from the contact area, move into that area, present the hard bits, drive through, finish on my chest, find my chest, and then get the recoil, change that picture for the jacklers, and then your job's done. You need to keep control of the ball. So when you take processes, you go, right, did I have an early catch, or am I waiting for it to go past my body? Am I presenting hard bits? Am I getting the ball away from the contact? Am I working in contact? What does my body position look like? And then once I get into contact, am I driving? Am I finding my chest? And do I have a good placement away from the jacklers? And then once you tick those boxes, you've successfully implemented the process. And when you get into trouble mid-season, like I said, you can go back to that process and pinpoint and say, I'm not working into contact because my body's too high. Guys are getting under me. I need to work on that. Come Monday, Tuesday, you'll go with the skills coach and you'll just work on body position and post-contact work.
Yeah. Is that, it sounds like school to me. Is that a written down thing, or is it something that they discuss? I mean, do they have to go study it like a document? Or, does each team have a different process, for example, of what you just described? Does it differ from team to team, or is it basically the same?
Yeah, that's what makes this game so great. Every coach has a different process that he wants his players to implement. And what's nice is you sit before the season with your coaches and you go, okay, boys, what does our successful ball carry principles look like? And then when you get into the season, if you ask your players, gents, if someone is looking at a Lions player ball carry, what will they say they see? What do we want them to say? And then the players need to tell you what your ball carry should look like. If they can't, it means that there's a gray area in between. Guys are putting the ball towards the contact, or they're too high. Some guys are looking for the offloads before they even beating the man, whatever the case may be. But every coach will have, there'll be a lot of similarities, but every coach will have his own process for different things within the team, basic skills wise. And those are the things that they need to focus on.
All right. So now we've discussed the skills. I want to talk to you about a team this weekend that totally dominated the match in all aspects. And I'm talking about the Bulls versus the Sharks. Scrums, lineouts, everything. The Bulls were completely on top of everything. At 75%, they got over the advantage line, the gain line, yet they lost the match. And a lot of it was down to, I suppose, a bit of the basic skills thing, or wasn't it?
There were a few handling errors in certain parts of the match where I think if they had kept the ball, they would have asked one or two more questions, and that gets the defenders into a bit more trouble, and then you let them off by a knock on or a pass that shouldn't have been thrown, especially in that weather. And it looked like a great day, but the amount of sweat that runs down your arms when you play in Durban, it's like a wet game, and people, you wouldn't understand what's going on. But the ball is so slippery. I remember Ruan Pienaar used to play with thick tennis. What do you call them?
Wristbands, yeah.
Wristbands. And he taped them up so the sweat would go into that and not get onto his hands. But I think the handling errors might have cost them for a couple of chances where they could ask one or two more questions of the Sharks defense, and they let them off the hook.
It's interesting you mentioned that because we heard now during the week that Elrich Lowe, for example, lost more than 5 kilograms in that match because of humidity and everything. And that, like I said, that becomes a wet ball effectively. Do you practice with a wet ball? Do they make the ball wet, for example, and then throw it around and see how you handle it? Or is it just something that you have to adapt to on the day?
No, it's something you have to adapt to. But the way Ulrich plays, it's surprising that he didn't lose 10 Ks. He's all over the field, and his physicality. He just looks like a no nonsense, trying to cover everywhere. I really enjoy watching him play. But to come back to the ball, no, I think that's what gets some of the teams there. It looks like a really good day, and you'll do your captain's run there. You won't break too much of a sweat there, so you won't get that feeling of that wet ball. And then on the day, and the Sharks players are used to that, obviously, and on the day, it's a great day in Durban, and you feel like you're playing a rainy game.
Yeah, I can imagine. I saw that. Anyway, let's talk about that match quickly. The Bulls, like I said, completely dominant. Last week, you and I spoke about the fact that the Bulls can't convert the entries in the 22 into points. They had 18 entries, and they only scored 1 point something points per entry. This week, similarly, they got many entries into the 22, but they chose not to go for posts, for example. They went for scrums again and again. And that sort of skewed the statistics in terms of scoring when you're in the 22. But the point is, why would they go for scrums if they had a clear opportunity? You mentioned before, Jake was referring to the Champions Cup being test rugby. This is now the URC. But the point is, you're playing against Springbok side for all intents and purposes, although some of the Springboks weren't in the team. Why would they not go for the points? I mean, that doesn't make any sense. Were they trying to stamp their dominance on the game? What was the thinking?
That was, while I was watching, that was the only reason I could think of. You're so dominant, and you're looking to put the ref under pressure to give a card. You're trying to get a card out of it. I just think the scoreboard pressure would have had a bigger impact on the game than trying to get a card, and also call it the volatility of the ref's decisions in terms of scrum penalties and scrum decisions. Sometimes it's a bit of a lucky packet. You don't know what you're going to get, and then you've dominated for 3 scrums, and time again on the fourth or fifth one, the ball goes either because of a knock on or the ref just you've given 3 or 4 already. You don't want to keep giving it. So I think that could have had a bigger impact had they gone for the points. It's right under the uprights, get your 3 points. And they were getting into the 22 rather easily because of their dominance in the scrums with their gain line advantage. So it wasn't like they weren't going to get there again. They'll get another opportunity. So take your points, jog back, secure the kickoff, get yourself back there. And 3, 6, 9, maybe score 1, you get 14, 16 maybe. So I think the scoreboard pressure would have done them the world of good.
Yeah, you talked about this volatility of the referees' decisions, and there were quite a few Bull supporters hot under the collar after this match. But you talked about rather the ref making no calls instead of wrong calls, and that was quite evident this weekend, wasn't it? What does that mean?
Yeah, I just feel sometimes that non-call is worse than a wrong call, because the team that's dominating is usually the team that's got the negative effect of that. So when you've blown up penalty after penalty, and this one looks like the ball's coming out, but they've clearly gotten out of the contest, that penalty should go to the dominant team, and the ball comes out, and you say play on, because now you don't have a penalty on your referee sheet afterwards. So yeah, the non-calls is sometimes worse than the wrong calls.
What do you think of the argument that these local derbies should have overseas referees? Not that we're saying any of South African referees are either incompetent or biased, but it just sort of takes that sting out of it. A Scottish referee is not going to have an interest in either one of the two teams, in whatever subconscious or unconscious way. Isn't that a better idea? I mean, that's probably to do with budgets and stuff, but yes, I mean, it makes so much sense to me.
I'm also for that. I also think the players look at the referee differently. Not that they respect him more, but there's definitely a different flavor to those types of matches with a referee from another country taking control of derbies like that, and the players do normally react differently in those types of situations when they have refs from different countries.
I'm talking about the ref, the way Willie Leroux spoke to the ref, or almost attacked the ref. That left a bit of a bad taste in the mouth, and that was too much. That went too far.
For sure, I think Willie would have said after seeing that he'd be the first to say that it's probably not one of his best moments. I also think he knew what was coming and he was trying to mitigate them into different, maybe looking at something different, try and take in their eyes of the obvious, but it's definitely not something that we want to see in the game of rugby.
Now, talking about Willie, the whole game pivoted on the penalty try being awarded, and that try was a direct result of, you call it a chappie. It's a mixture between a chip and an uppie. So a nothing kick that led to a penalty try. Talk me through that thing, starting with the kick and what happened then, and going into the penalty try. What your thoughts was on that?
The Bulls got the ball back from a box kick, I think, from what I can remember. They had forwards in that ruck. I know Ulrich Lowe was standing next to it. Then they had forwards into the next pod, and there was nothing really on for the Bulls then. There was backs outside Willie. There was a wall of black jerseys in front. So what Willie chose to do is kick a kick for, I think Stedman Gans was trying to run onto it. So it's a little dink in behind. But Jaden Hendricks had already moved back into position. He saw that coming a mile away. Where I would rather have just slowed it down, get your shape back, get three forwards around, start asking questions again, build your momentum up. It was kind of like a hit and hope. They got the ball back, moved it to the edge. Jaden went through. Jordan went through. There was some interlinking passes, and obviously it landed up, with de Klerk and Mapimpi fighting for the ball there. And I still think it was a penalty try. If you're not in a position to play the ball, you certainly can't hit it away. And by the looks of things, Mapimpi was in a position to score, and that ball was, by all accounts, it was going to probably stay in field there. So great call from the officials there, but that changed the game. That certainly changed the game. The whole momentum shift was in there, and Bulls still had opportunities after that, but it just didn't feel like they were in control like prior to that.
Like I said, last week we spoke about the Bulls going up in pods of 2 rather than 3 when they're in the 22. This week they sorted that out. That seemed to have worked better, and although they didn't score because it didn't go for the posts, but yet they didn't win this game. Now, Jake said after the game in the press conference, he has to go take this break, they only play again on the 11th of January, and think about what is he missing? Those were his exact words. If you were in Jake White's shoes right now as the coach of the Bulls, with the Bulls being where they are now, very good team, dominant in all aspects, but not being able to finish things off. They've now lost 3 games in a row. What would you think would you fix as a coach if you were the Blue Bulls coach?
Well, that's a really good question. I think as a coach, you'd always want to start looking at your processes, but start looking at yourself first. Am I maybe putting pressure on the players where they get nervous on the field for making mistakes? Have I maybe put pressure on them for keeping their jerseys, where players don't want to make any mistakes? Because if you don't want to make mistakes, you're not going to try things. And when you do extra and you do make mistakes, does that come into account when the next team selection's on the card? So have I done anything to promote that feeling within the team? If that's not the case, then I'd go and have a look at, what have we done well up until now? What do we need to continue doing? And what do we need to change? Where have we decision making is as much my responsibility as the head coach as it is the captain on the fields, because they can overrule certain calls. So, should we have taken points where we took scrums to get, there's a lot of time left. We'll get back into the 22. Let's take the points. Okay, let's change that going forward. What's happening with our mauls? Why are we not successful? What does our kicking game look like? Go to your processes, go and pinpoint things that work, pinpoint things that's probably not functioning the way you wanted it, or saw that it was going to work, and make the change. You've got time now, but get the players input, because the more you get their input, the bigger the chances of them buying into it. You make the decision at the end of the day, but I think start with yourself. Have I promoted a culture in the last couple of games maybe where I've put a bit of pressure on because winning was more important than having a look at the small improvements we are making? We might not be winning, but there's certain things that's really clicking into place. There's certain combinations showing themselves, good or bad, that we're learning from. Start with yourself and then have a look at your playing processes, attack and defense. What's working, keep that. What's not working, let's see where we can change it, and then get the players to align with that, and then go from there.
That takes a lot of self-awareness from a coach. We talked about the different types of coaches. You get the old school coach who would have said on Monday, come Monday, you're going to suffer. You remember Bierman van Zyl would send the guys up and down the hospital, healed in the police college in Pretoria West. And then you get the sort of a mixture, the newer coaches, but still with a bit of an old school attitude. And I suppose Jake would probably fall in there. And you've got the new generation, Franco Smit, Johan van Graan, and those types. Where does Jake fit into this thing? Do you think he's got the self-awareness to be able to make this kind of call that you're talking about?
I think so. I think he's, if you look at the experience and the way Jake's turned teams around in the past that hasn't performed, taking them to Super Rugby semi-finals, and, being really dominant in a lot of competitions where he's coached, he'll definitely draw from those experiences to. And envious, sometimes it's difficult when you're in a season and it's at 100 miles an hour and there's no time to sit back and reflect. When you get a bit of off time, a bit of family time, switch off, get to a place where you can just reflect on your own, take real time to think about what's been going on, draw from those experiences. I mean, he's one of the most experienced coaches out there. So I think he's definitely got that experience behind him. He just needs to go in and find out where exactly he sits with that, and then, align himself and align the team with where they want to go forward.
Let's talk about the players briefly. You talked about Ulrich Lowe playing out of his skin, and he does that week after week. You can clearly see what Rassie now sees in him, and that's why he's being picked for the main squads often, regularly. But Hanekom at 6 as an experiment. I had my doubts. He played 6 in the URC season last year as well, or last season, and I wasn't overly impressed. What was your thoughts on his performance as a 6 this weekend?
He still had his runs. He still made his tackles. I think the fact that he can play 6 gives you an extra line-out option, where 6s in South Africa have normally been a bit shorter, a bit smaller, not really a line-out option. Hanekom gives you that as well now. So I think having him on the field in any of those positions is a plus for your team. And it's not like I can't tell you that it didn't work. I think that loose trio on the weekend was quite effective.
And the combination, Elrich and Hanekom as well, whether they're 7 and 8 or 8 and 6, and like in this instance, they play well together. They know each other, sort of, playing off each other. That's a good combination going forward.
Definitely. You can see the grinder. Ulrich, he gets stuck in. Doesn't matter what the number on his back is. He gets stuck in and does the hard yards. Cameron, he can do that as well, but he can get you go forward. He's got that little bit of an X factor, scoring 2 tries against the Saints out of nothing. giving the Bulls a shout at the end to still win it. So that's a great combination. And don't throw away Quibus Visa. He's a real live wire, very physical, big body. So that loose trio is gonna make some damage.
Just as an aside, we talked about processes and procedures. As you used to playing 8, now you have to go to 6. What's the difference? How do wouldn't you instinctively revert to your number 8 style of play? Or do you have to physically remember? Is it something that needs to be drilled into your head? No, you must be closer to this or further away from that, or what? How does that work? How do they adapt to these out of position things? Because I thought I've often saw some of the Bulls players being out of position that they're not used to, and I thought maybe it's because they're not used to it. They've been selected at places they're not used to playing at.
In certain positions, it's a lot more difficult. I think if you get certain players that can play 4 and 7. Now, line out wise, you need to remember the movement patterns of both of those positions, which is really difficult. It depends on your principles within your line out attack and your line out defense. Is 6 going to defend outside? Will he be defending inside the line out? And then on attack as well, if he's part of the line out as a 8 in a 6-man, he's probably part of the line out. As a 6, he's probably ripping, which Cameron did. So it's definitely a lot more detailed to remember. And then from the 8th man's position, it's changed from the days where the 8th man was playing backwards. They used Dwayne like that because they wanted him to carry the ball from the back after the box kicks, etc., with the box. But now the 8th man is frontline defense. He's, depending on their shape, he's probably running on the edges, or he's part of the pods running in the middle. So it's not that different within the attack. On the defense, your folding changes. Sometimes your 6 stays, or your 6 goes and your 7 stays. Sometimes all 3 loose forwards have to fold. So there's a lot of detail that goes into it. So it's difficult, but they do this every single day. And it's really impressive the way some of these players remember the detail of 3-4 positions. And it gives you just that variation and the options that you have with players that can cover certain positions, and you don't get detail mistakes.
But let's talk about the Sharks a little bit. Last season, they had a horrific start to the season. They ended up focusing on the Challenge Cup and winning the Challenge Cup. But this year, they're doing much better. They were sort of seen to be the outsiders in terms of winning this game, the underdogs. I don't think you can say that. They're playing at home. It's one of their best games. They didn't have all their best players, but I couldn't see that they were supposed to be the favorites. What is your impressions of the Sharks, the way the Sharks attacked the Bulls or approached this game with the Bulls? What did they do right? What did they do wrong? Why did they win this game?
I think they stayed in the fight. They stayed in the fight long enough to get that penalty try, and the pressure was put over to the Bulls, and they had to make the plays. But I think the way they stayed in the fight, they got totally dominated in a lot of areas, and players like Hooker, Hendricks, Buthelezi, those boys they really stepped up. And for me, it just comes down to them really staying in the fight and critical moments, turning over mauls when they're supposed to, winning scrums when they're supposed to. And I said it last week or last time we spoke. They look like a happy team, and happy teams find ways to win.
And the Bulls, are the Bulls a happy team?
When you lose, it's difficult, Emvia. There's nothing like winning for building team spirit, etc. When you lose, when there's a hole in the culture, losing becomes difficult to handle, and it shows up a lot more. So I can't tell you what's happening inside the Bulls change room at the moment. It's just that you would like to think that the dominance that they showed, they should be winning these matches
comfortably, because they were totally dominant. I mean,
Yes.
all aspects. I mean, whoever thought that Ox and Chair would be suffering in the scrums, for example? and yet they were suffering, and Bulls couldn't take advantage of it. Anyway, the other big match of the weekend was the Stormers versus the Lions, and now I wanted to ask you: are the Stormers back, or was this simply a flash in the pan against probably a bit of a weaker team with a red card against it?
If I was the burning bush, I could give you the perfect answer, but I'm not. What I could say is that the Stormers, this was definitely a confidence builder for them, because the Lions, it's one of it's one of their bogey teams. They know how to win down in Cape Town as well, and the Stormers played the red card really well. The way they went into wide spaces at the right time, and the Lions really had problems setting their defense early enough, and that just snowballed into quick ball and them chasing the game.
Talking about the Lions' defense, that was one of their strong points, Jacques Fourie being in charge of it. But there's a lot of talk about it having slipped lately. And you said specifically against the Stormers, there was a very good reason for that, for not being able to set, like you just mentioned. What went wrong with the defense?
The Stormers played really cleverly in terms of making decisions where to play. So with off wide rucks, that's normally where you want attack to be. You got a full line in front of them that you get off the line. And what the Stormers did well is they didn't run into those walls. The ball would go out the back, 2 passes, they'd be into that wide space. Now, they might not have created the man over, but what they did create is they created one-on-ones in big spaces, which is a lot easier for the attack than running into double hits and triple hits and, having jackal threats in the middle of the field. Now you're keeping your ball on the sides. Lions have to work back. While they're working back, quick ball, play one phase in, next one you go into the wide channel on the opposite side, or you go back into the blind, and the defense just doesn't set. And that puts you into bad positions, which means you're losing the collisions, which means that you can't slow the ball down, and which means that the next phase is going to probably look very similar to the previous one. You just can't get set.
Well, and the fact that they had only 14 men on the field obviously played a role there as well. They had to cover for someone who was supposed to have been there, and he wasn't. And he wasn't there because of a pretty stupid tackle. Talk to me about that tackle. You mentioned about he knew what he was doing, hiding his arm behind his back, things like that. Tell me about that. That's quite interesting.
It was disappointing. I think he himself would be really disappointed with himself. A tucked shoulder, it's a jackler being really low. There's no mitigation for that. It feels like it's good to be aggressive. You want your players to be really aggressive, but you need composure. And I still believe that cost the Lions the game. And it was really difficult to come back from that. They were in trouble from, they got mauled a lot easier, obviously with 1-4 not being on there, and it made the defense a lot harder. And also, sometimes you get a card and everybody's putting that extra percentage to make up for the guy that's not there, and you see that a lot. There's a big trend, and in the stats that you can pick up. But in this case, the decisions the Stormers made and where they played just got the Lions off guard and put them into bad positions.
You mentioned to me that the Stormers had 66% gain line advantage, and that's due to a large degree because of Sasha Feinberg and Gomazulu playing at 12. There was a lot of questions being asked: why is he at 12 and Moani is at 10? Why didn't rather just put him at 10? What was your thoughts on that experiment using Sasha at 12?
Yeah, I like it. I really like that. I think it's 2 10s playing together. They know what the communication should look like. And if you look at the meters carried, they carried over 1,000 meters, with Tennyson carrying, I think, 185, and the next two was Delport, Libok. He was at 85, and then Warwick Galant was at 115. It shows you that they played in the right areas of the field, and they got the ball into into those spaces. But with Sasha there, there's an attacking threat that they just can't leave, and he's physical as well. So it's not like a it's a 10 playing 12. He's not that physical. He bashes the ball up, and he can step you, he can run over you, he can run around you. So there's a variation in his attack that's really nice. But I'd still prefer him at 10.
You mentioned to me when we started preparing for this, you used your hands, you did this. The Bulls and the Sharks were like this, but the Stormers and the Lions, the Stormers' position were different. They didn't run through the wall, they looked for the door. Explain that to me.
If you look at the collisions again in the Stormers and the Sharks and Bulls game, it was very physical. The ball in play time, I think, was 27 minutes, and it was very direct and front on. And then if you look at the collisions in the Lions Stormers game, it was very side on into the wide channels, which was a much different game, and a game that I'm used to seeing the Stormers play when they play well. It didn't look like a tens game where we're just throwing offloads and no structure and hoping for something to work. They were making good decisions. There was good communication. They were composed. They didn't force things. Their breakdown looked good. And like we said, Nettling Forshia scored a pearler of a try, and it's part of their attack. It's the way they attack.
Yeah, he's probably one of those guys who's going to get a nod, a call up to the box pretty soon, because he's impressive and he's so mobile. And I saw him joking on X saying he's going to tell his grandchildren one day that he ran past 8 lions and he even took a drop kick to convert the try and everything. It's going to grow in stature as the years go on. Typical prop forward like Richard Bands. Remember that famous try that he scored? Nobody will ever forget that. But the question I wanted to ask you here, did the Stormers play this well? Because they've been struggling with playing well, making stupid decisions. We talked about them almost playing volleyball, offload, going nowhere, especially Warri Galant being guilty of a bit of too much flash and not enough go. But this changed this weekend. Was it because the Lions were a weaker team, or a weakened team with the 14 players, or was it something that the Stormers have now sort of sussed out and knew what they were doing wrong? You talked about going back to process and stuff. Is it maybe what they did, went back to the basics, and now they're trying to rebuild almost?
The other thing we have to mention is their defense was really good. When your defense can back up your attack the way they did it makes a difference. But again, I'll say a lot of teams get cards and they go through the game defending really well because teams make bad decisions where they play. The Stormers took advantage of that card by going into space where the Lions had one man less and got the ball into that space, had the Lions chase back, and they were making less front on big tackles, less jackals, and that gave the Stormers the quick ball that they want to play with.
So if the Stormers were playing against the Bulls, for example, let me ask it another way, would they have played as well?
Did the Bulls have a yellow card? The red card?
Yeah, the same situation, just the Bulls instead of the Lions. 14 players. So the question is, were the Stormers that good or were the Lions that bad? That's what I'm getting at.
I think the Stormers were that good. I think they would have, if you didn't have a line speed team that could prevent them from getting the ball into those spaces, the result probably looks the same because of the one man. The Bulls really rely on their dominance up front. You get taken, that gets taken away. One of your big guys gets taken off the field. It has a big impact. It's like taking Eben Etzebeth off and, he's not there. So, no, I think the Stormers were just that good and they took advantage of the card by the good decisions that they made.
Well, that's a good thing. It means that they've gone back to the drawing board, did some homework, used the opportunity of not having the Champions Cup last week where they sent the junior team over and did homework and figured out what was going wrong. And they managed to fix some of it. That's a good thing. I mean, going forward, it's going to stand them in good stead.
That was always the danger from a Lions point of view. If teams started looking at the way they defend, and because breakdown steals, the Stormers got 4 and the Lions only got 2. Now, again, they had a red card. But that's been one of the Lions' main focuses. Guys are running into double hits. That ball gets slowed down. JC Pretorius comes in, he steals the ball. Everybody's poaching within the Lions team. They've got a real big focus on breakdown steals. They only got 2 in this game, and part of it's because of the wide rucks chasing, not being front on, and less ruck pressure. And the Stormers, actual fact, got 4 of them.
Let's talk about the Lions just briefly. They started the season off very well. The first 4 games, they were unbeaten. And then they went over to Leinster, sort of determined, looks like, not to lose too much, by too much. They defended well, but they could have done better. Munster, they sent a team that couldn't have won. Osprey, same thing, sent a very junior team. Sort of are the wheels coming off now, or is it just a bit of a blip?
I think the card was a bit of a blip. Like they needed that to take that game to a 26-24 win or lose. That didn't happen, and it turned out to be a 29-10 loss, if I remember correctly. So no, I think they'll come back. What they need to do, NBA, is they need to stick with their DNA. They're a team that doesn't go away in attack and defense. They're a good defensive side, but also when the Lions are brave and they take the ball to the line, they get the ball into the wide edges, they have a go. That's when they put teams under pressure. But they shouldn't just do that at Ellis Park. They should do that wherever they play. Put teams under pressure and play to your strengths.
Right, this weekend again is, of course, the Stormers versus the Sharks in Cape Town. That's going to be a big one. I mean, the Stormers are now suddenly looking like a better team. The Sharks have now managed to beat the Bulls. Their tails must be in the air, full of confidence. It wasn't their best side. Sio wasn't playing. Eben wasn't playing. Bongi wasn't playing. I don't know if they're going to be back for this weekend, but they should be quite confident about being able to not just face the Stormers, but take them down, even if it is in Cape Town.
Great game to see if this was just a flash in the pan for the Stormers. To see if they can, where is the game? Is it in Cape Town?
Cape Town, yeah.
They'd want to focus on winning that match, but I think again it's the way they're going to win it. Play to your strengths. You just showed yourself, the team, what you can actually do when you play to your strengths. And you've got great attacking players. Don't go into your shell because you're playing against a very high-profile Sharks team. Play your brand of rugby, stay in your lane, and ensure that you follow your processes and make them play on the day.
André, let's talk about your team quickly in Japan, the Hino Red Dolphins. You had your first match. You lost your fly off out for a couple of weeks, 2 days before the season started, or 3 days. How did it go?
Not our best performance, MV, especially after the success of the previous season. Our preseason was successful. We didn't have one win in the preseason, but we were ahead in 2 of them, and then we put our French players on, and then we end up losing. We nearly beat the Toyota side, so we were very positive going into this match. And then on the day, I think it's just a case of players. The mindset wasn't correct. And we gave away easy points, and we still managed to claw our way back, and we had a kick to win it, scored in the end. We had a kick to win it, but the wind is kind of, I think it wasn't as bad as that Saracens wind, but it was quite strong, and obviously the kick didn't go over. So we lost by 1 point, and the boys are quite distraught. The Japanese players get really down on themselves, and it's a management picking those guys up again. But today went well, the training went well, so we're looking forward to our next game's only in the new year, so hopefully we get stuck in there.
Who did you play against?
We played against the Shimizu Blue Sharks.
Names. That's interesting names.
There's some funny ones here, yeah.
Yeah, I can imagine. No, who played in that team that we know?
Kuni van Wyk, he played at the Pumas. Lima Sopuanga, the Samoan fly-off, he played for the Highlanders at one stage as well. You had John Ben Kotso, who played wing for the Stormers. So 2 South African guys that played there as well. And
your fly-off, is he Japanese, the one that was injured?
No, it's Simon Hickey. He's played for the Crusaders and for the Blues. He strained. He got a grade 2 calf strain from goal kicking. So it's the first time for me and for him that we've ever encountered a player getting a calf strain from goal kicking. So yeah, it's going to be probably only about another 2-3 weeks. So he's going to miss the next 2 games.
Who replaced him?
Doi Keita. So he started with us last year, and he did really well. I think he did tremendously well. He took that last kick, narrowly missed it, but it's probably, for his first game in those conditions and leading a team he was probably going to be on the bench anyway. So no, I was really proud of the way he went about his business, and he'll be better for it come the next one.
How many games in the season before you get to knockouts?
We've got 14 games.
Sure, it's a lot.
Yeah, you play home and away.
Okay, and then is it quarters, semis, and finals, or is it just semis and finals?
It's promotion relegation. So you want to end top 3 into the to get into those promotion relegation games for Division 1.
Oh, okay, all right. All right, André, thanks. That was enlightening as always. Appreciate it, and we'll talk again next week. Thanks, man.
Thanks, Envy. Speak to you next week.
It's the Out the Box Rugby Podcast with André Pretorius and Welman.